So when we're looking at the great divide of science and spirituality, this is one of the main divisions out there on a lot of levels. You find a home in this conversation for both of these around the disclosure community and the conversations that come up. You have advanced technologies that are being discussed that push the envelope of what we know in science and our academia, and then you have experiencers who are going through and abductees that are talking about these experiences that are highly spiritual and some of the spiritual philosophies that come in. You as an academic that's gone through and really kind of grounded your work in the academia, have you had any experience through understanding this that has unified your perspectives around spirituality?
Sure have. Yeah. My background has been, and anyone who's followed me in any way, they'll think, oh, well, Dolan, he's all just the facts. He's very grounded. I hear that a lot. Richard, you're so grounded. I used to think, wow, it's just because I look for facts every once in a while. How is that so unusual? But yeah, I try to be very factually based in what I know. But I have a very deeply spiritual element to my life. And I personally happen to believe strongly in a dimension of reality that is well beyond this physical. And it's important to me. It's a faith, but it's more than a faith. It's something that I really believe in. And I also believe that there's let's say a spiritual destiny that we all have. So when you look at the UFO subject, you get these two sides of it. You get the nuts and bolts, let's look at the propulsion systems and let's look at the military encounters and let's lay all of that out there, the technology. But you've got all of these people who've had experiences with these craft and with the beings. Sometimes these are physical, direct experiences, and sometimes they're not. You talk to people who have what they'll call downloads. It's hard to know, did you really have a download? Or are you having some kind of psychotic break? I have wondered this. And I think in some cases, some of the folks who will say that they have downloads, I will just say that I'm not always convinced that they have. But I do believe that some of them do. I believe in remote viewing. I don't need to be convinced of that. There's something interesting that goes on with this entire reality that is physical and, let's just say, spiritual. And that affects people. Yeah, the hell. I'll just back that up. There's something about this phenomenon it's technological, but it's also more than that. It affects people, let's say, in a spiritual way. I think that's totally appropriate. That's because we're dealing with a phenomenon that is paradigm shattering in every way that I can imagine. And that's why it's been resisted by the establishment for so long, because it's just too big. It's too big. So it causes us to reevaluate the physical structure of our society, but it's also going to cause us to reevaluate what we are as beings. Think of it this way. A person has a telepathic communication with another being. So that says a few things. It says that these beings are telepathic, but it also says that we are telepathic. It says something about us that we hide from ourselves as a society. And what would that mean to the human family to know that we have this truly awesome ability what would that do to us? So these are really important things. And I firmly believe that we need to understand all of it. The problem that we have with understanding what we call the spiritual side of it, probably from a scientific point of view, is being able to provide sufficient evidence. For example, you could have an experience that's very powerful but very subjective. How do you convey that to someone else who didn't have it? That's difficult to do, and it's not fair, really, to expect some random person to say, oh yeah, I believe everything you just said. That's silly, because there's a lot of liars out there. There's just, that's what we are. We lie often as well as we tell the truth. So we have to have a method by which we can be sure of our information. That's called science. That's the scientific method. And a lot of these spiritual types of experiences or non-local experiences or whatever you want to call it, like they're not easy to quantify and measure and prove to the rest of the world. And that's, we may not have an easy time of getting around that. Like I've asked myself this question for a long time, like how do you prove that someone had a telepathic communication with another being? Damned if I know. So they're not always easy problems to solve, but I do believe that, it's part of the mix. It's part of this phenomenon, and we are fools to ignore it because it's very important.